Hello students, trust you all are doing good. Welcome to the daily news analysis. I am your educator Prithviraj Singh. So today we'll be understanding the important news articles of 15th of March 2022. Let us begin with the same. Guys, on the in the newspaper there was a news with regard to foreigners' right to approach the local courts. Right. Now this issue has actually surfaced because you would be knowing that when the COVID wave, the first wave broke out in the year 2020, there were some Tablighi Jamaat people who met at Jama Masjid, Delhi, flaunting the COVID-19 protocols, right? And they were being detained, right? So they filed the petitions, with regard to their visa conditions violations, right? And the government has urged the Supreme Court to help lay down a long-lasting implication for the country on the subject of foreigners' right to approach the local court. Guys, we must understand that what all rights are available to the foreign citizens and what all rights are available to Indian citizens. One thing is very clear, that Article 19, right, which is your right to freedom, which in turn includes 6 more rights, is restricted just to Indian citizens, right? I repeat, Article 19, which is right to freedom, which in it has 6 fundamental rights. For example, freedom of speech and expression, right to assemble peacefully without arms, right to movement, correct, right to reside, right to form associations, right to profession, trade and occupation. They all are limited or restricted just to Indian citizens. Whereas Article 21, which is a much more broader article, and it talks about right to life and personal liberty. It is applicable both for the citizens as well as the foreigners, right? That means both the foreigners and the citizens can enjoy Article 21, correct? So in this backdrop, we can understand this article, that Article the 19 is not applicable to foreigners, right? Because Article 19, as I said, has 6 rights. Article 19 clause 1 has 6 rights: A, B, C, D, E and G. A is freedom of speech and expression. B is freedom to assemble peacefully without arms. Freedom of association, unions, freedom to form association, unions and cooperative societies. And you all know that this has been added by 97th Constitutional Amendment Act 2011, which gave the constitution legal status to cooperative societies and inserted them in Part 9 B of the Constitution. Right to movement, right to reside in any part of the country, and right to freedom of profession, occupation, trade and business, right? So Article 19 clause 1 talks about right to freedom, right? So in this sense, the freedom of speech and expression, freedom to assemble peacefully without arms, freedom to form associations, unions and cooperative societies, freedom to movement, freedom to reside in any part of the country, freedom of profession, occupation, trade and business, they all are restricted. They all are restricted to Indian citizens. Very important, students. It is very important for all the students preparing for law entrance exams as well as UPSC and the other government exams, right? So Article 19 clause 1 is restricted just to Indian citizens. So foreign citizen may be barred with regard to freedom of speech and expression, with regard to assemble, with regard to form associations, right? And that is this article which has, the provision of holding the meetings peaceably, right? Now it's being said that the Tablighi Jamaat congregation was being banned because they flaunted the COVID-19 guidelines, and it was definitely you have the freedom of holding meetings peaceably or freedom to form associations or to assemble peacefully, right? But then it is just limited to Indian citizens, right? Whereas Article 21 is applicable to citizens as well as non-citizens, right? Except enemy aliens. Enemy aliens. That means those countries with which we have bad relations or sour relations. So while most fundamental rights are available to citizens and foreigners alike, for example Article 21, there are certain rights which are exclusive only for the Indian citizens, like Article 19. So we are very clear with Article 19 and 21 and their application. I hope it is clear. Let us move to a more broader understanding of the fundamental rights and which all rights are available to both the citizens and foreigners, right? Guys, all the articles starting from 20 till 28. So you just remember this by this format, by this thing, that all the articles from Article 21 till 28, right? That means Article 20 till 28 are for both the citizens as well as foreigners, right? Plus Article 14, which is right to equality, that means equality before law and equal protection of laws. So Article 14, that is equality, is also applicable or is also being enjoyed by the foreign citizens as it is enjoyed by Indian nationals, right, or Indian citizens. Whereas 20 till 28, they all are also applicable to both the citizens as well as the foreign citizens, right? So 20 is protection in respect of conviction for offences. 21 is protection of life and personal liberty. 21A is right to elementary education. 22 is protection against arrest and detention in certain cases. 23 is prohibition of trafficking in human beings. 24 is prohibition of employment of children. 25 is freedom of conscience and free profession. 26 is freedom to manage religious affairs. 27 is freedom from payment of taxes. And 28 is freedom from attending religious instructions in certain educational institutions, right? So these are the rights which are available to both the citizens as well as the foreigners. If I talk about the rights available only to citizens of India, right? So all those rights which are not covered here, can you tell me? Yes, Article 15, Article 19, which we discussed just a while back, that Article 19 is available only to Indian citizens, right? Which is right to freedom, right? Article 15 is also available to Indian citizen, that is prohibition of discrimination. 16 is equality of opportunity, again to Indian citizens. Article 29 is protection of language, script and culture of minorities. 30 is right of minorities to establish and administer educational institutions, right? Guys, here Article 31 is not there because Article 31 talked about right to property and it was being removed from the list of fundamental rights, as you all know, by 44th Amendment Act of 1978, and it was made a legal right under Article 300A, right? So that's therefore the series is broken. As far as Article 32 is concerned, which is right to constitutional remedies. So guys, this article would be available to the foreigners only with regard to violation of those rights which they enjoy, right? So when we talked about Article 20 till 28 plus Article 14, which are available to both the citizens plus foreign citizens, right? So that means the foreign citizens can approach the court of law or the Supreme Court directly for the violation of Article 20 till 28 plus Article 14. I hope it is clear, right? So Article 15, 16, 19, your 29, 30, they all are applicable only to the citizens of the country. Guys, you need to be an Indian citizen to vote in elections, to contest the elections, to hold any constitutional post like the president, the vice president, governor, ministers, judges, etc. Plus to get any benefits from the government given only the citizens of India, right? So all the benefits from the government, right? The direct benefit transfer schemes, the PDS schemes, they all also would be available only to the Indian citizens, right? I hope it is clear. Moving to the next news article. Yesterday we discussed that the budget session would resume in the parliament, and the parliament would start its proceedings with regard to the voting on the budget, right? And we discussed that after the presentation of budget speech by the finance minister in Lok Sabha, it goes to Rajya Sabha, right, and where it is being discussed. Then it is being sent to the departmental standing committees, or DSCs. There are around 24 departmental standing committees, correct? And they actually scrutinize and analyze the budget, right? Because in budget you have the demands for all the ministries. Let's say the health ministry may have raised the demand of 100 crore rupees. So that demand would be scrutinized by the departmental committee on health, right? And they would be having members from both the Lok Sabha as well as the Rajya Sabha, correct? So they would assess the demands presented in the budget, right? And in this during this time the parliament actually is in recess. That means parliament does not work, right? And the departmental standing committees actually scrutinize and assess the demands of the budget, right? And the parliament resumes its sitting to actually vote upon the budget in the month of March, that is somewhere around 15th of March, right? Where every demand would be voted upon by the Lok Sabha, right? As we discussed yesterday, that the demand in order to become a grant has to be duly voted upon, has to be voted upon by the lower house or the directly elected house, that is Lok Sabha. And once the demand is being voted upon, let's say there is a demand of 100 crore rupees by Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. If it is being voted upon by Lok Sabha, it would become a grant. That means a grant ho chuka hai, right? It has been voted upon. And guys, here we discussed that it is exclusive right. It is exclusive right of Lok Sabha. That means Rajya Sabha cannot vote upon the demand for grants. And this is mentioned under Article 113 of the Constitution. Very important, guys. We have discussed that the budget is a government document which talks about the estimate receipts and expenditure of any financial year, and it is mentioned under Article 112 where it is called as annual financial statement, right? So in this sense, the finance of the government starts from Article 112 and ends up in Article 117, which is your finance bill. Yesterday we discussed that there are 6 stages in the enactment of the budget, and the last stage is the passing of the finance bill, which is Article 117, correct? So I hope it is clear. Guys, the government has sought the parliamentary note for net additional spending of more than 1.07 lakh crore, right? Because the budget is always an estimate, what all revenues that the government would be earning and what would be its expenditures or its expenses, right? So it is always an estimated figure. There may be some cuts in the budget, there may be some additional spendings, there may be some transfer of the funds. The government may be requiring more additional funds for possibly the new schemes launched, right? So for these grants or these additional grants, something called as other grants, you have this article called as Article 116. Just before Article 117, which talks about the finance bill, you have Article 117, which talks about other grants, right? For example, the supplementary grant, the additional grant, the vote of credit, so on and so forth, correct? So the government has sought the parliamentary note for the net additional spending of 1.07 lakh crore, and this would be a supplementary demand. I hope it is clear. So we have understood about the exclusive right of the Lok Sabha with regard to the voting of demands in order to make them grants, and they are mentioned in Article 113. We talked about the budget, which is Article 112, annual financial statement, and the finance of the government is mentioned under Article 112, till Article 117. 117 is a finance bill. Article 116 talks about the other additional grants, right, which may be, you know, sought by the government, but definitely it requires the parliamentary approval. Guys, one thing is for very clear, that even if you are withdrawing a single rupee from the government public exchequer, and the public exchequer is called as Consolidated Fund of India, and it is mentioned under Article 266. Even where all the public money is being credited, and any money, if it's being withdrawn, has to be withdrawn from CFI or Consolidated Fund of India, right? Now, and even if the government has to withdraw a single penny from CFI, it has to take the approval of the parliament. Approval means it has to be passed, duly voted upon by Lok Sabha. I hope, and this ensures the legislative control or the financial control of legislature over executive, right? So this is how the system of checks and balances work in the state. I hope it is clear. So these are the demand for grants, and this is how it's being explained here. Moving to the next news article on the screen. The retail inflation has climbed to 6.07%, and definitely it is a cause of worry. Why? Because RBI's Monetary Policy Committee has set a target of 4% inflation. Inflation, right? Plus minus 2%. That means the range is 2% till 6%. So this is the tolerance limit, right? And if it exceeds this 6%, then definitely it is a cause of worry, right? If it exceeds 6%, it is a cause of worry, right? We know that yesterday the figures came, and the retail inflation has climbed to 6.07%, right? That means it has overshot the tolerance limit as prescribed by RBI's Monetary Policy Committee, which was formed in the year 2016, right? So therefore it is a cause of worry. Guys, inflation is when too much money is chasing too few goods. That means you have more money in your pocket and there is less supply, right? When you have more money, let's say the money supply is more, right? The income levels are more. When the income levels are more, the demand would be more. When the demand is more and the supply is not matching the increase in demand, there is a supply constraint, it would shoot up the prices. And this increase in this general increase in the level of prices is called as inflation, right? I repeat again, when too much money is chasing too few goods, that means supply to come hai but you have more money with you, right? Supply is less but you have more money with you, right? And in this sense the demands would be high. There would be more people to buy the limited quantity available in the market, and therefore the prices of the commodity would shoot up, would increase, and this general increase in the level of prices is called as inflation, right? Now it seems from this equation that definitely the income is more, and definitely the government always wants that the income be more, right? Isn't it? And because the government would want the growth and the employment opportunities, the government would create the growth and the employment opportunities, and when the growth and the employment would increase, it would definitely rise the income levels, right? But definitely if the income levels when the income levels would increase, it will increase the demand, right? So government would always want to increase the growth and the employment perspective or prospects, whereas RBI's objective is to control inflation. And how does it control inflation? By managing or controlling the money supply, right? So therefore there is a trade-off between inflation and the growth, right? Higher the inflation, higher the growth, correct? But RBI is looking to control the inflation, right? And this fight between RBI and the government is somewhere illustrated through something called as Phillips curve. Right, where it says that the rate of inflation is inversely proportional to the rate of unemployment. That means more the unemployment, less the inflation, right? So therefore there is a trade-off between the RBI and the government, and there is a fight between the RBI and the government, right? In any case, inflation, we have understood the concept. Definitely a moderate level of inflation is always good for our country, because it results into higher income levels or higher money supply in the market, right? But definitely if the inflation shoots the tolerance limit, which is 6%, it is a cause of worry, right? Definitely after pandemic, the COVID-19, the government across the world are going ahead with the fiscal stimulus. They are pumping, they are injecting money into the market, and this has led to increased income levels, and the prices have also increased, something called as inflation, right? Plus we have seen that since in the last month, on 24th February, when Russia invaded Ukraine, and the war is still going on, and we have seen that Russia is directly bombing Kyiv, right? It has adversely impacted the global economy by rising the oil and the natural gas prices. And we know that most of our imports constitute of the oil, comprise oil, right? And therefore there has been increase in the oil prices. And just yesterday the price of the crude oil, or the Brent, was around $108 per barrel, right? So this is all something called as imported inflation, right? That means the inflation coming from abroad, correct? And because when the oil prices would increase in the global level, it would increase all the domestic prices, right? So therefore it is definitely a cause of worry, and the government has to find the solution to this. I hope it is clear. So retail inflation is something which has been calculated at the retail level, and the food prices are seeing an upward trajectory, especially in the rural areas. As you can see, the last month it was 6.01%. The same day, 15th of February, it was 6.01%, and March 2022 it is 6.07%. So today, guys, the retail inflation is the inflation which is being is the indicator which is being used to measure inflation in India. Definitely what we use is retail inflation, urban and rural combined. So wholesale price index is WPI is seeing a is in double digit. It is somewhere around 13%, and right, which is something calculated at the wholesale level. And if I talk about the CPI, it is the weighted average of prices of a basket of consumer goods and services. Now the difference between CPI and WPI is that CPI is being calculated at retail level, number one. Plus it also accommodates the services into it. Services like medical services, recreation activities, transportation and communication, hospitality. So all these are included in services. All these are included in retail inflation or consumer price index, CPI, right? Plus the weight of food is high in CPI, right? So it is the weighted average of a basket of consumer goods and services at the retail level, right? And it is one of the most frequently used statistics for identifying periods of inflation in India. I hope it is clear. So these are the 8 major groups of consumer price index, guys. As you can see, transportation is a service, then medical care, recreation, education and communication, apparel, housing, so on and so forth, right? And food and beverages has the highest weight, right? Highest weight. I hope it is clear. Coming to the other details, the base year for CPI is 2012, and there are 4 types of consumer price index or CPI as follows: CPI IW or industrial worker, CPI agricultural labor, CPI for rural labor, and CPI rural urban combined. And this is something which is being used in measuring inflation in India. I repeat, CPI rural urban combined is used to measure inflation in India, right? If I talk about the above 3 measures, that is industrial workers, agricultural labor, and rural labor, it is the Labor Bureau in the Ministry of Labor and Employment which actually compiles the data of IW, AL, and RL. I repeat, it is the Ministry of Labor and Employment which compiles the data of industrial workers, agricultural labor, and rural labor, whereas it is the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation which compiles the data for CPI rural urban combined, right? So there is a organization, agency under Ministry of Statistics, MOSPI, called as CSO, right? And you would be knowing that it is the CSO is being tasked to actually come up with the figures of national indicators like GDP, GNP, national income, similarly CPI, etc., right? So I hope it is clear. If I talk about the wholesale price index, it is something which you pay at the wholesale level, right? And the base year for WPI is also 2011-12, and it is being published by the Ministry of Commerce and Industries, right? So I hope it is clear. But today the WPI is in 2-digit range, and the cause of worry is definitely the retail inflation, where the prices of food commodities are are shooting their bar, and they are more higher in the rural areas. Coming to the editorials section, on the editorial page of the Hindu, there is a beautiful article by Suhasini Heather, a renowned journalist, talking about the fragmenting world order and the United Nations. She's actually exploring the impact of Ukrainian war on the global interconnectedness, and is it a cause for worry in the post World War order, right? Guys, India has abstained from voting in Security Council. We know that Russia is our topmost arms supplier. Around 70% of arms are being procured from Russia. At the same time, we know that the past decade, India has tilted more towards the West, especially to counter China along the LAC plus Indo-Pacific. And America has also moved close to India in order to counter China in South China Sea, right, in something called as Indo-Pacific strategy. We know that in Indo-Pacific there are some groupings which are being formed, like Quad, which is not a military alliance. It do have a military as a component, but it includes many other dimensions like vaccination coverage to the world, green economy, free and open navigation, so on and so forth, right? So Quad is a group of which includes Australia, Japan, India, and America. Similarly, there is AUKUS, Australia, UK, and United States, right? There is also Five Eyes Alliance, right? So we have discussed this before. There is also something called ANZUS, right? So is India abstaining from vote in the Security Council and not voting against Russian action? Would it be detrimental to India, and would it adversely affect its relation with West and its Quad partners? There is definitely the economic cost that the unprecedented sanctions of the United States will have on Indian trade, energy and defense purchases, right? Because when America has imposed sanctions on Russia, it would have adversely impact India. Why? Because India is in defense sector dependent on Russia, number one. Number two, there is also a procurement of Su-400 missile from Russia, and America has threatened India that it may impose CAATSA sanctions, right? CAATSA sanctions over India, right? The impact the Ukraine crisis is having on the global world order, and which is fragmenting in every aspect of global interconnectedness in terms of international cooperation, security, military, economic order and even cultural ties. Guys, so this article is definitely talking about the global interconnectedness, and Moscow's action was being brushed off in a way that was even easier than one the US did when it lost the UNGA vote in 2017, right? It also talks about the challenge to the global nuclear order, as we know that Russia has, occupied Chernobyl nuclear power plant, Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, which is the largest European nuclear power plant, and definitely there is a challenge to the global nuclear order, especially in the nuclearized world. Is it that the Ukraine is has followed the non-proliferation regime, and is it that reason why Russia is boldly ravaging the country? What if Ukraine was a nuclear nation? The cost of the nuclear non-proliferation regime's credibility. Ukraine and Libya willingly gave up nuclear program, and that is the reason why they have been invaded. Even the Western recruits have joined the Islamic State to fight Syrian President Assad's forces, right? So this article also talks about the economic cancel culture and as 400 missile deal, and how Russia is getting closer to China. Plus this article also explores the post-war order, where NATO and America's double standards have been exposed, and they have not come to rescue of Ukraine, right? So so in this sense, the article ends with the era of deglobalization, a very important terminology used by Suhasini Heather. Deglobalization, that means, is the international order post the in the globalized world has failed? Should we move towards protectionism? Should we secure our borders and our domestic producers? Is it the era of deglobalization, as it has been seen after Brexit, after many protectionist programs across the world? And is it bringing down another form of Iron Curtain? So in this way, this article is important, and expect the students to go through this article. All right. So you all know that the Western businesses like McD, Coke, Pepsi, they all have stopped their operations in Russia, and Russia is exploring alternative trading arrangements. And so this is all about the same. Now next news article in the editorial page, talking about the Iran deal, right? And how the delay in the Iran deal will deepen the security crisis in West Asia and inflate the global oil prices. Guys, we all know that Iran is the third largest exporter of the crude oil, and at the same time Iran had also, it is definitely a signatory to NPT, but then also it has been doing the nuclear or uranium enrichment. Right, it has been doing the clandestine nuclear operations. There are many nuclear power plants being built in Iran. Right, now it happened that in the year 2015, we all know that because of the secret or confidential or clandestine uranium enrichment and the nuclear weapon building, America had imposed sanctions on Iran. Now in the year 2015, a joint comprehensive plan of action was being signed by P5 plus 1 plus Iran. This one is Germany. Right. So JCPOA or Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was signed in the year 2015 with P5 countries of the Security Council plus Germany plus Iran, and it called for, it said that all the sanctions on Iran would be removed, right, on the condition that Iran must open its nuclear power sector to the inspections from the world. That means it must open up its nuclear sectors or nuclear power plants for the inspections by the various world agencies, number one. Number two, it must stop the enrichment or nuclear uranium enrichment for defense purpose. Right, on that condition the sanctions would be, would be taken away. Right, so this deal was called as Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, signed in the year 2015 between P5 plus 1 plus Iran. Right, now it happened in the year 2018 when Donald Trump saw that Iran is not curtailing its nuclear operations. Donald Trump withdrew from the deal. He withdrew from Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And the moment the biggest country like America comes out from any deal, it would make the deal as defunct. Right, so the deal became defunct with the withdrawal of America from JCPOA, although the remaining countries supported JCPOA and supported Iran's revival into JCPOA or America's revival of JCPOA, but because Iran went after the withdrawal of Trump, Iran has augmented its uranium enrichment, and therefore there are talks going on in Vienna by all the countries of JCPOA, and they intend, their objective is to revive or introduce America again into JCPOA and thus revive the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. Right, guys, if Iran deal is delayed, it would have a deep security crisis in West Asia, and as I said that Iran has the third largest, it has huge global oil reserves. So therefore, if there are sanctions being imposed on Iran, it would inflate the global oil prices, right, and this would be a double whammy. Why? Because the crude oil is already crossing $110 per barrel, right, because of the Russian war in Ukraine. So the article explores the same issue. Removing sanctions on Iran and letting Iran's oil enter the global market could also ease oil and gas prices, which shot up after the Russian attack on Ukraine. Right, now the only solution to placate the global oil prices is to remove sanctions on Iran. If you remove the sanctions on Iran and revive the JCPOA, then it may placate the global oil prices or could ease the global oil and gas prices. So therefore the JCPOA must be revived. But again, as I said that Russia is a member of P5 and Russia is having very tense relation with America, especially after its invasion in Ukraine. So therefore Russia, any deal without Russia won't happen, right, because Russia is an original signatory of JCPOA and is a member of Joint Commission that supervises Iran's compliance or nuclear compliance. So Russia under this agreement is required to take control of Iran's excess enriched uranium and work with Tehran to turn its Fordo nuclear plant into a research facility. Very important. They may ask you that Fordo, FORDOWNPP, or nuclear power plant, Fordo nuclear power plant is situated or located in which among the following countries? So it is Iran, right, whose capital is Tehran. So Russia is required to take control under JCPOA. It is duty bound to take control of Iran's excess enriched uranium, right. Enrichment is actually, those converting the isotopes of the uranium for the nuclear purpose, right. But it is not clear whether Iran and China would be ready to go ahead without Russia, right. So therefore there are clouds of uncertainty hovering over the JCPOA deal because of the Russia war in Ukraine, and a further delay or a total collapse of the Iran deal would not only deepen the security crisis in the West Asia, but also would add pressure on global oil and gas prices. So therefore it is very important to revive this deal. I hope it is clear. Very important article, and I expect a question on this. So this is about the same. You can just go through the article and you'll understand the issue. So guys, I have included a map, a political map of Iran and its neighboring countries. As you can see, Iran, the capital is Tehran, and India has invested in Chabahar port. Similarly, there is another port called as Bandar Abbas, where India and Russia both have invested, right, and it would in turn give way to the Central Asian countries, the landlocked countries, Central Asian countries which are resource rich but landlocked. We can also access to Afghanistan, which is under crisis after the advent of Taliban. We can also go to European nations, right, and this transport corridor is something called as International North-South Transport Corridor, of which Ashgabat agreement is one part of INSTC, right. So guys, here we can see how Arabian Sea, and this is Persian Gulf, it is Gulf of Oman, this is Strait of Hormuz, right. They may ask you what Strait of Hormuz connects Iran and is a narrow passage of water between Iran and UAE or Iran and Oman, right. So in this way, see guys, here you have Ukraine, Black Sea, and this narrow passage of water is called a Sea of Azov. This is again Crimea, which is being annexed by Russia in the year 2014, right. So therefore I always advise my students to carry atlas with them all the time. So Oxford School Atlas would be very, very important for your exams. Always carry an atlas with you, right, so as to have an idea about the geography and the political details of the countries. Guys, JCPOA, as I said, that it was signed in the year 2015. However, it came into existence in the next year, that is 2016, and it has P5 plus 1, and this one is Germany plus Iran, right. Very important. They may ask you about the composition of JCPOA. Guys, Saudi Arabia is saying that if Iran's nuclear operations or plans or projects are not stopped, then it would also develop a nuclear weapon, because there are news surfacing that Iran in few months time would be building up its nuclear weapon. So therefore it is a very serious cause of worry. How has Iran responded after withdrawal? Well, it has increased its uranium enrichment. It is building the centrifuges, and it is enriching its uranium and building more nuclear projects, right. And definitely America has imposed more sanctions and tough actions, right. We all know that recently there was a drone strike by America on IRGC or Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Commander General Qasim Suleiman. And Qasim Suleiman was killed in this drone strike by American forces, and this has enraged Iran, which in turn has increased its uranium enrichment, and in turn has become a security crisis to the West Asia. Although there are talks going on in Vienna to actually revive the JCPOA and synchronize the return of both Iran and United States. We all know, guys, the point we have to keep in our mind that Iran is a signatory of NPT, Non-Proliferation Treaty, which came into existence in the year 1970, right? Although it is building the nuclear projects, and it has threatened that if JCPOA is not revived, or if the sanctions are not being removed, then it would actually come out from NPT, right? The current president of Iran is Ibrahim Raisi, and he's been there since August 2021. Ibrahim Raisi. If I talk about the significance or impact of the deal or revival of JCPOA on India, definitely India's interest in Chabahar port, Bandar Abbas port would be revived, and its transport and its access to the landlocked countries through INSTC and our Ashgabat agreement would be emboldened or would be strengthened. This would also further help India to neutralize the Chinese presence in Gwadar port. We all know that China is investing in Gwadar port, which is very near to Chabahar, and in order to counter China at Gwadar, just around 120-130 kilometers from Chabahar, which is because China has to otherwise travel long distance through South China Sea and then Malacca Strait, Indian Ocean, in order to go to the Asian countries, other African countries, and therefore China has built something called as CPEC, China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, which runs from Pak-occupied Kashmir, right? So therefore, it is very important if JCPOA is revived, it would strengthen our position at Chabahar and Bandar Abbas and counter China. I hope it is clear. So it would further help India to neutralize the Chinese presence, right? And very important, it would help India to procure cheap Iranian oil and thus aid in energy security. And also INSTC would speed up, and Iran is presently India's third biggest supplier, right? So what is the significance of JCPOA? Definitely it is very important, because otherwise it may lead to some nuclear use of WMDs. Israel had taken preemptive military action against suspected nuclear facilities in Iraq and Syria. Saudi Arabia has since signaled a willingness to obtain nuclear weapon if Iran successfully detonates one, right? Because if Iran, and it's being in the news that Iran is in the process of detonating a nuclear weapon in a few months' time, so therefore it is a serious cause of worry, and therefore Saudi Arabia has also signaled that it would also be building the nuclear weapon if Iran does so, right? So this is all there, and here you can see the nuclear power projects of Iran, and the project that I was discussing was Fordo nuclear power plant, very important, and this has been converted from fuel enrichment to technology center with the Russian help. Similarly, you have Natanz, which is now Iran's only uranium enrichment plant. Natanz, right? Very important, Natanz and Fordo, right? Then you have Isfahan, Busheshar, Bonab, etc. Right? So I hope it is clear. So guys, that's all for today. I hope you enjoyed the session. Stay blessed and be an avid reader, right? Read on daily basis, right? My videos would always help you out. Please do like, subscribe, share and follow, right? Give your valuable comments and the feedback. That's all for today. Wish you all the best. God bless you. Bye.